Hey, Kua.
Hey, Kendra.
We are back for episode 2.
Episode 2, season 3.
There we go. We got it right. So we're happy to be back this season again. Like we talked about last week, we have some phenomenal people coming through to the podcast.
Yeah.
So we have a great guest today. Normally we just dive right in, but I just got excited.
We did get excited. We get excited. Usually we say, "Oh, how was your day?"
But I was really excited.
But we excited. So we're gonna skip all the formalities and dive right into the conversation today. We are extremely excited.
Yes.
Very excited.
Overly excited.
I don't have any other adjectives at this point, but I'm super excited to invite Chairwoman, Legislator April Baskin to the podcast to chat with us today. And we've been having some really great conversations. We've developed a real friendship with April, and we're just excited to bring her on to have some real conversations about the D&I space from a generation lens.
Yes. And how does that look in your position, especially in Erie County? Some of the things that you were able to do and accomplish, because you are a very accomplished woman, Black woman. So we're excited to hear about that as well. And then some of the initiatives that you have going on as well in the legislature. So
we're going to start. We actually pulled up an article because you've been doing a lot in the equity space, right? And so as we talk on our podcasts often around diversity, equity, and inclusion, we highlight equity because it really helps us correct some of the wrongs from the past, but also acknowledge some of the things that needs to change for the future as well. And so you've been really instrumental in creating a vision, and you're calling it the pathway forward in terms of your initiatives to really put us in a place where we need to be in Erie County. So I don't know, you want to read a little bit
so
for the people.
Earlier this year, so you announced obviously a full package of legislation dubbed the Pathway Forward. And you said that it's important for the public to be aware of your plans and the 5 new laws. So we'll kind of talk about that, aimed primarily at what you said will be assisting underserved and underrepresented groups in Erie County. So the 5 laws include the Erie County Percent for Public Art Act, new Office of Health Equity, which I'm really excited to hear about. India's Law of Erie County, modernization of the laws regarding women and minority-owned businesses, and the Erie County Language Access Act. So just tell us a little bit more about that. How did that come to be? Why did you think that was important to have the pathway forward for our community?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for the work in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion that you guys contribute to the residents of Buffalo and Erie County, to local corporations, the education system, and to me as a district leader. You have both been instrumental in helping me fill this space with legislation and policy reform in Erie County. I feel like the term DEI was definitely on the rise pre-COVID. It was a sexy word that everybody was into, everybody wanted to use, everybody wanted to be down with. And so I just added it to my vernacular as that was the trend. And then COVID hit, and there were realities that we could never unknow about the amount of inequity that marginalized communities face against communities that do not have racial barriers or economic barriers. And I began to immediately, of course, advocate for the residents in my community who I saw, like I'm a district legislator that represents the east side and the west side of Buffalo. So the 14215 zip code fell within my district. Early on in COVID, 14215 was one of the zip codes that were receiving the highest COVID cases. And that was because of 2 things. One, a lot of low-wage healthcare workers and frontline responders lived in the 14215 zip code, and they were responding to COVID. They were the people that could not afford to stay home. They were the people who cleaned the hospitals, who cleaned the bathrooms at train stations, do drive the NFTA buses and trains. And then on top of that, there was another sector of 14215 of people of color because of inequity surrounding health. just had underlying health conditions that made them more vulnerable to not just getting COVID, but passing away from it.
Right.
So I immediately said, these people need help. I need a testing site in my district. I need this, I need that. And everybody was, whoa, April. Well, if we do it there, then we have to do it here too. And then, well, if you get this, then these people have to get this too. And that's when DEI really started to resonate with me. I was like, hold on.
That equity piece,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The equity piece was like, man, like this is, you guys have this, and the debate over what is fair, over what is needed, went on and on in the legislature all throughout 2020. And it got ugly because all 11 legislators were desperately fighting for their residents.
Right.
And so I became a lot more educated on the needs. And I said, you know what? I could sit here and I could fight this battle every single week on the floor with my colleagues in the legislature, or I could put some action to it. So when we started to what we thought was come out of COVID, which really was just adjusting to the lifestyle of accepting that COVID-19 was in our community, I said, I got to deliver a package of laws that really even the playing field in a way where the people who need the most get the most first. And I want to do that through legislation, and I want to do that through policy change. And it was very unconventional because county legislators historically take the position of amending the county budget and just having fiscal oversight of the county's finances and departments. And every once in a while, they may once or twice a year introduce a local law, maybe on a good year.
Okay.
But doing something like a package of multiple local laws, that's like stuff that they do in Congress. Like, that's crazy. But I was like, listen, after what I saw, man, this is needed. And so that's how we got to the pathway for it.
And I think, that's it just shows, the innovation that you have and the approach that you took to put these laws together. And one of the things that I really admire you for is the way that you brought the community with you, right? And so you didn't just introduce these laws and say, hey, these are laws that I think we should put forward. You went and you got local experts to come with you on the journey. And that's something that I think more people should do and look to do, but it was huge, right? So one of the laws that we talked a little bit about was the new office of health equity, and I had the pleasure of sitting with you in the legislature to talk about what that impact could look like for larger communities and specifically communities of color. Through that lens of COVID, right? We all saw that in healthcare and we all saw that need. But just the fact that you were able to get all these local folks together to say, hey, this is something that we need to be pushing forward was huge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think you're continuing to push the pathway forward in terms of your bills, but it's also the innovation that you have in terms of how you've been doing that's been really admirable.
Yeah, sure. Community organizing, I think, is defined differently based on a person and their God-given talents. I think I have learned that in working in the space of community organizing, there are those that have absolutely no problem having a sit-in at an elected official's office and actually stopping that elected official from being able to park their car in their parking lot. Or we see on a regular people who are faithful to holding signs and standing outside in the cold outside of the holding center surrounding the injustice in our local county jail system. And I've always accepted and understood that my role in community organizing was finding experts who had the like-minded goal of those that we often label as activists, and bringing them together to a political or governmental space to be able to be advocates instead of activists, and then finding a way to bridge that. So I'm huge. I've always campaigned on the slogan building bridges. I believe that that's why God has created a pathway for me to even be in government, because it's not like I came up the traditional way where I was a political science major or worked for an elected official. It was just something it was an opportunity that just kind of landed in my lap. But yes, I knew very early on that when I did the pathway forward, it was going to be a huge community initiative, and that my colleagues in the legislature or any colleagues in any other branch of government were not going to be able to push back on me because I had the people behind me who not only wanted it to be done, but they had the expertise and the knowledge in the field. And so out of the 5 local laws, 4 of them have these community boards affiliated with them. And that's a big thing, especially for elected officials that like to have the final say. We get elected by the people to make the decisions. Why invite so many people in the room to make decisions? Because that allows for transparency and balance for us. We need to be accountable to the people that elected us to be in office. So everyone's reading these local laws and they're like, April, every law you write has this community advisory component to it. And I'm like, yep, it sure does. Because who's going to make sure that we don't just pass this bill and then kick our feet back and say, we did a good thing? Who's going to make sure that? And the community advisory boards are the people who helped me craft the language of the legislation. So they're the experts in the community that are the boots on the ground people that deal with these topics daily. They will work in concert with the elected officials who decide the policy and who decide what funding goes where. And that is building bridges. That is organizing the way April Baskin knows to be a community organizer. And I believe that is going to drive us on a pathway forward.
Right. And like you said, you need the activists and the advocates. That is something that is really important to have because you need both at the table. Someone I think who needs to be outside of the holding center holding those signs, right? But someone who also can be at the seat at the table, have a seat at the table and negotiate and have those conversations. And so that is truly what community building looks like. When we talk about even activists versus advocates, I think about even my parents, or I think about people from like civil rights movements, right? You had both, but you had a lot of those activists. Right. And so I think now our generation is moving into those advocates. And so you're seeing that difference, but it's beautiful to see those two come together.
Yeah, a model that the labor movement often uses is educate, agitate, organize. And so you have to have the people in the space that are knowledgeable about the problem. They go out and they educate the community. This is what the issue is. This is a huge problem. And then you need the agitators, the activists. So you need people to then translate that education into, are you okay with that? Isn't that a disservice? Are you happy about that? No, it hurts you. It harms your community. It harms your family. You know that we're much better than this and that we've elected people who could demand more, right? And now everybody's educated and now they're agitated. And then there's organizing. And I think that is where our generation comes in. Now you got to tell all those people, okay, we understand the topic. We know that we want something to be done about it. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet downtown at this location at 5:00 and everybody's going to be there and we're going to get it done. And so educate, agitate, organize. I tell myself that almost every day. And I love playing a different role and wearing those different hats at different junctures of trying to get something done for the community. But I'm very clear on which hat I am wearing and my purpose in that time. And I think sometimes people who struggle in the space or become a little too fluid and they have weak results is because they're not accepting what role they are to play on a topic. They don't want to accept they don't want to play their position. That gets tough.
I think that's interesting, and it makes me want to talk a little bit more about your role and your, I guess, journey to get to this position, because when we bring on guests, we're often asking you, how did you get here, and what message do you want to send to the next generation who might be listening? But something that you said in terms of bringing all these folks together, right? So the activists, the advocates. When we look at, I think not just politics, but in general, we talk a lot about generations and how there's a shift that's happening in organizations right now. So there's about 5 different generations in the workplace. You got the traditionalists, baby boomers, Generation X, millennials,
and Z.
Who's the
Gen Z?
Gen Z. Obviously, I'm not a part of the Gen Z,
Z.
Generation. But you got all these different generations that come together, and their approach to work looks different. Everybody has a different background, a different idea about what used to work for them. When I look at some of this new data, even in organizations that I work with, millennials are the largest population of people that are working right now. And not too long ago, there was a lot to say about millennials in terms of, y'all all need a trophy, or this, that, and the third. But just looking at generations from that standpoint, you mentioned how there's this organized, agitate, this whole concept. What do you think about like this landscape right now? Because I think there's a big divide that's happening in terms of how things, should be done. There's younger people that want this to be done quick and yesterday. There's people who are in it who are just like, hey, we got to work within the systems that we have now. And folks who are just saying, hey, we gotta, you got a little bit now. You might have to wait a little bit more to get to this point. And so I say all that to say, you were historic in your own, not only your nomination, but also you being on the legislator or being on the legislative, component as the youngest person, right? Like, so talk a little bit more about that and talk about just these generational shifts. Have you seen that? Have you felt that? What does that look like, in the space that you're coming from in terms of government?
I think that in the space of, I think some days being a unicorn, it is overt that I am different. It is something that I have become, I just understand where I'm at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I've been able to translate a lot of frustration into empathy and compassion for being a product of a Rust Belt city that is extremely old school, extremely segregated. The seat of the county, which is the city of Buffalo, is poor. And so with that comes a lot of traditionalism. Because to get to a place like that, and I think in 2021, you would have to be not just blame the leaders that have been in place, but also the community itself has had to give into a sense of complacency to be able to allow it. And I don't by any means ever pick on the residents or criticize them in any kind of way, but I will just say that on a day-to-day basis, I know that there are a lot of people who resist creating a counterculture in Buffalo and Erie County. It is just not the way we do things.
Yeah.
Every time there's sometimes I bring up ideas in county government, but that's not how we do it, April. Yeah. That's just not the system. It doesn't work like that. In local politics. That's just not the way it goes. That's not how people come in. That's not how people get things done. And so I, being an artist, being someone who is a product of Buffalo's arts community, who had the opportunity to live 10 years in New York City and meet people from different walks of life and different places from all over the world, come back home, and for people to say that's not how we do things is so boxing to me. It's difficult. So yeah, I look at myself and I say, when I won my seat in the legislature, I was a first-time candidate. I had absolutely no political experience at all. I didn't have much of a voting record outside of voting for American presidents, which was used against me in my campaign. I was running against 4 men. I was running against people who were attorneys, who had political science degrees, and I was a single mother on welfare, recently divorced, and just running a small nonprofit project, the college simulation experience, trying to make a difference in my community. And an opportunity came where they said, listen, the DEI thing was a thing. We got this seat that's open. It was formerly, it belonged to a woman of color, and it would be great in Buffalo, if a woman of color took it over, because it's just like, that's a woman of color seat. So in that sense, it worked out for me, but that speaks to how Buffalo is. That's a black woman's
so
seat.
Much.
So a black woman has to have that seat. And it's kind of like you want the best representative for the community to have that seat, but we do encourage diversity. So me being a black woman with not a lot of experience ran, I won. And then immediately when I got into the space again, there was a white male that was going to be chairperson of the legislature, and the new caucus was looking around and they said, listen, she's new. She doesn't know anything really about the job. She's never been an elected official, never worked for an elected official, never worked on a campaign, but she's really passionate about the community, and she's young and she's black. Yeah. And that diversity would look really good. And so the support was there to diversify the legislature and move me up immediately to leadership.
Wow.
within a year and a half's time, the chairperson became a city court judge. And so with me being majority leader, which is the position right under the chairperson, from day one of just being elected, the way things work. And it's like the way we do things is the majority leader takes the position as chairperson if the chairperson ever has to leave. And so then it was like, boom, I was still in my first term. I wasn't even 2 years into being a legislator.
I remember that.
Never, still figuring out how to be a legislator, let alone a majority leader. And now you're the chair, and you're not just a chair. You are the youngest person to ever be chair in history. You are the only person to be chair in their first term. You're the only person to be majority leader and chair in their first term. You're under the age of 40. You're Black. You're a woman. You're not married. You don't know anything about this. And it was just, it was so much. It was so much. But I wish I could say that it's like always great and I'm always well received. I'm not. I do things differently because I'm a product of my generation, and I have accepted that there are a lot of people who are not. And so my job is to educate, agitate, and organize.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Every single day.
I mean, you just gave us a word there, but first of all, congratulations on everything.
Absolutely.
And you were saying you're a product of your generation and experiences as well. And I think that's really important to bring that to the forefront in this position. And like you said, right, we've never done it this way. You hear that all the time. I hate when people say, we've always done this way. No, let's agitate. Like you said, do something different. I mean, being in this position, putting the pathway forward bill or legislation forward, we've never done that.
Right.
No, legislators don't put together legislative packages. And it was why are you rushing this, April? Why are you doing so much?
It's imperative for the community.
Exactly.
It's imperative
the urgency.
For the urgency. But even, going back to what you were saying in 2020, there's a lot of things that never got pushed through or we've never done it like this before. But again, it was that sense of urgency. You had those people coming forth and saying, we need something to change. We need legislation. We need people in the streets. And a lot of that was led by the millennial generation.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And now you're starting to see, even when I'm working with kids, which is now the Gen Z, they are really too going back to being the activists. Right? You're seeing them organize social media the way they've never organized before. We've never organized before. I mean, their voices are loud. It may be messy sometimes, but it's loud, right? And they are very demanding of what they want and what they want to see moving forward. So now you're starting to see the next generation kind of come through and be those agitators.
And they say it happens in every generation. You know what I mean? Like if you ask our parents how things were done there, I'm sure it was a different story. And they came in and they were Rolling Stones or whatever they were.
The Black Panther movement.
The Black Panther movement. You have all these different movements, Black Lives Matter movement. And movements have really shaped, societal issues and our approach to what that looks like. But I think, it's the embracing, and I think that's what we're seeing you say right now too, right? Like it's the embracing of folks who want to do things differently, who, come into the space and say, hey, let's innovate and do it differently. And I think those are the challenges, we talk in diversity, in the diversity space. We always hear, hey, we want to recruit these diverse people, right? And first of all, what is a diverse person? But anyway, we want to recruit people with a diverse background, right? Want to get them in here. They're going to help us create this culture, but then ultimately this groupthink happens where you come in, you need to assimilate to how we do things. We don't do it like that over here. We're going to beat it out of you and make you kind of conform to this specific way of doing things. So I think to see that and hear that coming from the government space is really exciting and refreshing, and we need that. But I think, just from your background, saying you're a unicorn, right? Nobody has ever done that. Nobody. So you're the first to kind of come into the space and create that, and I think you're going to leave a lasting impression for the next generation to come, right? And build that. And so in terms of that, right, I want to talk a little bit about how you built this, so you're District 2, and how you built that cabinet. And you brought a lot of young folks to that table to help you create some of the, the legislation that you've been doing. So talk a little bit about that. Why did you do that? Why was that important?
So I believe in conducting myself like at the highest level of effectiveness that I can each day. And so if I'm going to be the chairperson of the Erie County Legislature and female, Black, and I have all of these unique things about me, I also understand that probably makes a lot of people who resist counterculture or someone like me uncomfortable. And so I understood very early on that I was going to need cover. And I was going to need a base of people who I could rely on to bounce ideas off and to develop this counterculture with me.
Okay.
Because the space that I had entered, I was the rookie, I was new.
Yeah.
And they are going to accept to a certain point the diverse girl because, we're down with diversity, but don't be trying to do too much.
Right,
you know. And so I was trying to do a whole lot. And I know they weren't going to do it with me. So I had to find people to do it with me.
Okay.
And I wanted those people to be people who were who shared the same mission as I did for the community. It was important for me. There's the political structures. A lot of people, it's transactional. So if you help an elected official, it's expected that you get people jobs, and there's a lot of that. And I just didn't need that. And I was also very careful that the people that I brought in didn't necessarily need me for their livelihood. They were going to be doing this with or without
Regardless.
April asking them.
Okay.
So that was like a thing with me too. So I was like, you know what? The president of the United States has a cabinet. And Mark Poloncarz, the county executive, and Mayor Byron Brown has commissioners. I don't have that. And I was like, but I deserve that because I'm going to work just as hard as they work.
Right.
And so I want a cabinet. And it was like, who does this girl think she bugging? And so people just always, your little cute cabinet, April, I have a cabinet meeting stuff, but that cabinet where Kua serves, where Kendra serves, where there's a Jamil Cruz serving, has for the first time ever delivered a district legislator who has delivered a district address.
Yeah.
Never happened before.
Yeah. Right.
But it's happening because my cabinet members are serious and about excellency. And that same cabinet is the people who I relied on to go to me with local physicians and build a coalition and develop a strong local law, which is being voted on in 2 days, this Thursday.
Awesome.
The Office of Health Equity.
Okay.
And that takes work. Like Akua, that wasn't like a one stop and shop, like, girl, let's have coffee and stuff. We met several times with multiple people over and over again. And consistently, Akua took time out of her workspace, out of the multiple jobs that she does to further our community, to give to that. And so it was also a requirement that I knew the people who were a part of the cabinet were going to be people who are just givers because they believe in it. So, the cabinet, of course, it started out with like a list of 60 people, but I had to narrow it down to people who were going to educate, who were not afraid to agitate and make people uncomfortable, who were going to organize, but who were going to be dedicated and committed, but who looked like me, who also wanted a counterculture. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do it within the space that I was placed in. So I went and got a crew. You know what I mean? I developed a crew, and that cabinet is now 40 members strong. And we have done things that, everything from giving Conway accolades, Conway the Machine, his accolades, and being like him saying, for the first time that no one's ever really given me this for community service. You know what I mean? No one's ever acknowledged me for giving back to the community. That felt so good, but that was us.
Right.
We did it with flavor and we did it with style, and we've, again, the District 2 event, all of the local laws that we have submitted, all of the policy change that we're working on, funding agencies that are not just, nothing against the Buffalo Zoo, nothing against the Science Museum, but there are people who are in their 30s and 40s who are doing boots on the ground work in the community, like picking up kids in the hood and giving them something to do. And they don't do it in exchange for some big side check. They do it for nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Nothing at all. I make it a point to make sure that those people get funded. With public dollars. So
and like you said, it's important to build that team, right? It's important to have, like you said, those givers, people who are going to give back naturally in their own way. And I think the way that you formed the cabinet was very strategic. Like you said, you have people in education, you have people in healthcare, you have people in so many different sectors, and that is what's needed to thrive in our community as well. So my question to you is, what's next? Like, what is next? You've built so much, right? You've built teams, you've built communities, you've built bridges, right? But what's next for you?
Man, only God knows that. I mean, it's so simple to say. I have no idea. I'm big on just making sure that I got as many a variety of coalitions together. So I've been successful with organizing the physicians of color in the medical space. I've recently launched a new initiative called Be Local, which is a coalition of 20 manufacturers of color in Buffalo. So people that make their own products, people that make their own T-shirts, own makeup lines, their own food, their own popcorn, their own jelly. Like I've organized that coalition and we've given ourselves a title. In the medical community, we've given ourselves a local law. The contracting community, we've given ourselves the modernized MWBE Act. The immigrant and refugee community, I've organized them to develop the language access law. There's a caveat in the cabinet that's specifically focused on civics because there are things that I would like to see improved in the local Democratic Party and how they engage communities of color, specifically people under the age of 50 years old. And so a couple of cabinet members actually serve as Democratic committeemen and zone chairs, and they're very, very involved with getting people elected and helping the Democratic Party pick candidates. And we talk and we meet about how we want to be more influential within the Democratic Party. The arts community. I've organized I've built a bridge and alliances with urban artists, and you guys were on my local Black Arts tour, where we just identified all the public art that has been developed by artists of color, and we got a party bus and we went around the entire East Side with foods and snacks and drinks, and we let those artists talk about their work, and that's how we developed the Percent for Public Art Act. Now there's going to be a pot of money in Erie County every year that goes to local artists to create public art. So I know the real way to making long-lasting, effective change that outlives me is to make sure that as many types of groups of people that are out there are organized and they know me and they trust me, and we are working on something that is going to make life better for that group. And I'm not going to stop until, I have 1,003 groups. You know what I mean? So you just let me know the next group. You know what I mean? I'm very interested in local restaurant tours of color, the food service community. I don't have anything going on with them right now, and I really feel like I would love to do some work with Black Restaurant Week. And,
I know because I'm like, okay. We're gonna chat. We're gonna chat after this because
I've just done it. I'm big on what's the next group of people that I don't have a relationship with. I've got Black construction workers down, Black educators down, Black teachers down, Black medical professionals down, Black product makers down, Black artists down, immigrant and refugee communities down. So I'm always looking for that next group. What do we need? What do y'all need? And the more that I operate in that way of organizing, before you know, you'll look back 10 years and there'll be all these pockets of people in the community who are accepting the counterculture.
I love it.
I love this.
Listen, I love this
I'm inspired too because I'm like,
I'm sitting here just so
look, she just gave us the blueprint, essentially for how you did it, and I think
I told all my secret. I told my secret plan.
It's secret, but I think it's the authenticity behind it, right?
Not nobody gonna stop me. Don't try it.
Not everybody can just come up, and do that. And do it in an authentic way, because when you call, we answer. Right?
Yeah.
And it's that real,
because you show up for the community.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, you're not just a person that's behind a desk or quick phone call or whatever. You show up for the community. You've been there since day one. I mean, I remember seeing you with the college simulation, and I was like, April doing her thing. I was like, the innovation behind that. And I know you said earlier that this position in the legislature kind of just fell in your lap. But it didn't.
It didn't. Right.
It's true.
God has put that in your plans, and also too building that community. You had that community
That's
from
true.
the beginning, and I saw you work and how you connected with people and how you drew people into the college simulation. It was like, I want to be a part of this.
Right.
It was fun. Do you remember, Jay, the organizing? Jay's always been there to help me organize of the Greek organizations to make the college simulation thrive.
Yeah.
Like we started out with like this, just like the state of the district started out. The first year is always like our tester pilot year. And the next year, you know, we add more flavor to it. So by the last time that we did the college simulation, it was a weekend getaway in Niagara Falls.
remember that, yeah.
And it was like, we had kids kids came from Syracuse,
Yep.
like on buses to stay the whole weekend. And a rap artist, D1, that wrote a song about paying Sally Mae back, his Sally Mae back. He was on my vision board for 2 years.
Wow.
And we got him to come, and it was just, I look back and it was just all of us. It was Kent was there like doing registration and and then, you know, we organized the Greek, the Divine Nine to come together and really inspire kids of color to get excited about college and to understand that responsibility. And so that was God preparing me for organizing all these other groups that I have to now. Remember that?
I remember that weekend because my brother and I came and talked about.
Oh yeah, there was the sports panel. Yeah,
yes.
that was we shut down the whole convention center up there.
It was a great
It
time.
was 2 nights, and I was like, what are we doing? We got all these teenagers
Yeah,
spending the night for 2 nights. We had kids in the pool, but we made it happen. 7-Eleven gave us mad pizza and snacks, and we was just up in the falls for 2 days doing the college simulation, encouraging kids to, you know, move on to higher education, and that definitely was a transferable skill. So
For sure.
God was definitely
Absolutely.
preparing me.
So,
I know, so-
look, you already know, because we forgot the last time.
Yes.
Okay.
See, we're Kua and
I know,
always
we
on the
be
same
we be
page,
here.
right?
We be here.
So we always talk about the gym of the day, right? That's
Right,
What we're going, okay. So
right.
we talk about the gym of
Or
the
the
day,
week.
or the week, or
You know,
whatever.
your gym.
Yeah.
What
so
gyms you wanna drop?
What gyms do you want to drop for the people?
Oh man.
You dropped a lot already.
Yes.
You dropped a lot already.
You know what I tell people? I want to tell people, be nice to yourself. I am really learning to be kind to my friend April, because
I like
April's very loving, and she tries so hard. She tries so hard to be a good mom. She tries so hard to be a good servant, a good leader. Over 10 other colleagues. In addition to being the chairperson, I still represent the most diverse district in Erie County, with the East Side and Grant Street and Elmwood Village. You know, those are different groups of people that live in those areas. And it's always, oh, but you didn't get this done. But you didn't go to the gym. But you're still gaining weight. But you still didn't do this. And you didn't spend time with the kids. You didn't get Christmas gifts yet. And it's just always like, you didn't do. And I am just like done with that. Like, I work extremely hard, and I do try every single day. And so I'm going to commend myself for that and be nice to myself, because if I'm not nice to me, then I'm not really training or teaching other people to be kind and nice and forgiving and patient with me. And so if there's any gem that I could drop to the community, I would say you need to start being very nice to yourself. Be patient, be kind to yourself. Don't say mean things to yourself. Don't judge yourself. Don't criticize yourself. Stop making lists of all the stuff you didn't do. Be nice. Be nice to yourself.
I love it.
I love that too.
Well, we want to definitely give you your flowers for sure.
Absolutely.
Because you
Give 'em back.
you
Take
are
these
amazing.
flowers
Listen,
now.
You have been inspirational. I mean,
You
for
guys
sure,
get
you got my
flowers.
wheels turning about so many different things. But I just want to say thank you for
Absolutely.
coming to Black Gems Dive In for sure.
We appreciate you. We see you.
We see you.
We
see
see
you
you.
guys.
We see what you're doing. And, you know, we'll be here to support you
I
along
know
the way.
that's true, and I'm
We
grateful
will.
to God for that every single day.
Always.
Absolutely. Well,
love it,
thank
guys.
you for coming on.
Yes.
It's another episode 2,
Episode 2.
Black Gems Dive In Podcast.
Yes.
We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
Peace.